11:49 is the time. The Commons Women Inequalities Committee has stopped using Elon Musk's platform as this, I don't even want to call it a row, as this hideous scandal continues to unfold in plain sight. And I hope many other political individuals and institutions join forces. But it is to American politics that we return our attention next. Simon Marks joins us live from Washington, D.C. Towards the end of yesterday's conversation, Simon, we turned, as we often do, towards the question of how the media will respond to the latest abomination, in this case, the killing of Renee Nicole Good. And we kind of have an answer of sorts, because it turns out that 4 members of the New York Times staff spent an almost unprecedented amount of time with the president, with Donald Trump, in the immediate aftermath of the Venezuela abduction. What do we learn from this? What do we learn from that? And how does it actually answer the question of how some legacy media that isn't in the pocket of Trump or his supporters is going to rise to the challenge of telling the truth while he and his closest associates continue to lie through their teeth?
Well, I mean, absolutely extraordinary, really, James. The New York Times, 4 of their reporters had the opportunity on Wednesday to spend over an hour in the Oval Office with the President of the United States, even watching him as he took a telephone call with President Gustavo Petro of Colombia. They were allowed to report that they had seen him having that call. The contents of the call were understandably restricted by the White House, although it is unbelievable that any president of the United States would ever conduct a phone call with another head of state, let alone another head of state he was at the time threatening to attack, in front of 4 reporters from the country's leading national newspaper. They started reporting what they had heard in that more than an hour-long interaction with Donald Trump on Wednesday evening, and indeed their initial dispatch focused on what he'd said about Venezuela and his decision that the United States is now going to be running Venezuela indefinitely. There's no timetable for elections, doesn't even think Venezuela is capable of holding an election, and certainly the United States will be owning Venezuelan oil for the foreseeable future. It was nearly 24 hours later before the New York Times, which had told us that they were going to be writing several articles based around these conversations with Donald Trump, almost 24 hours later before the newspaper disclosed to the American public that Donald Trump had used the phrase during the interview, "I don't believe in international law," had announced that he wasn't going to be constrained by international law, that he would instead be constrained only by his own morality. That's all I need, he said. Almost
but he doesn't
24
have any.
hours they sat on that. So, well, I mean, that's the other aspect of it, of course. I mean, the notion that the world is going to be now hanging on Donald Trump's own personal morality, which I think we can all, I mean, I think even Trump supporters, I think, would stipulate to the notion that at times the president's morality is somewhat questionable. But the idea that the old grey lady, you know, the nation's leading newspaper, would sit on that for nearly 24 hours at a time when, for example, our own Prime Minister has been saying he needs to hear from Donald Trump the legal rationale for what took place last weekend in Venezuela. Well, guess what? There isn't going to be a legal rationale, because the President of the United States says, "I don't need international law." And by the way, James, I just tried to find that story again on the New York Times website. It's not even on the homepage anymore. I mean, I mean, partly because, of course, so much is going on here. You know, we're in this, the last week has been the craziest news cycle on record, but you can't even find it on the homepage anymore, which is pretty staggering, given the nature of what the president disclosed to those journalists.
What would you have done? I know that's a completely unfair question, but let's imagine it was you and me. It's unlikely, Simon. Let's not quibble. It's you and me that were sitting in the Oval Office. And Donald Trump said, "I'm just going to take a call from the President of Colombia." What would you have done? What would we have done?
Well, I think we would have done what the New York Times did with regard to the phone call with President Petro.
I think we should leave the Oval Office. I think we should leave the room. I think we shouldn't be party to this.
No, I don't. No, I definitely.
That's the point, isn't it?
I would have said no.
Yeah, that's the point.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, no, you'd stay in the... my issue is not with them listening. I mean, I think it's bizarre
mine isn't either.
That the White House... Of course. I mean, bizarre, right? But
I was just enjoying the image of you and me sitting... I was just enjoying the image of you and me sitting in the Oval Office. That's the only reason I asked the question. Back to...
I was more enjoying the image of you and me leaving the Oval Office, him having said, I don't believe in international law, and us in the grounds of the White House immediately calling the newsroom and saying, blimey, we've got a heck of a scoop.
Except as that over disappearance from the homepage all he's done is say out loud what everybody paying attention knew to be true, isn't it? I mean it puts some of his supporters in temporary discomfort for pretending or claiming or genuinely believing that he wasn't all of the things his critics have described him as. But we come back to that point again, whereas will anybody let go of their support for Trump as a consequence of him proving that he's all the things they insisted he wasn't?
The whole week has been President Trump saying out loud the things that he would not previously have said out loud, not just on international law, but on this whole notion that he will be the determining factor in terms of what territory the United States takes, that if he wants to seize Venezuelan oil, he's going to go right ahead and do it. After that call with President Petro, he said that he's not planning currently to launch attacks on Colombia, but it absolutely remains in his back pocket, as does the possibility of military action to seize Greenland. I mean, the paper says that in his conversation with The Times, Mr. Trump sounded more emboldened than ever before when asked what was the higher priority, obtaining Greenland or preserving NATO. Mr. Trump declined to answer directly, but acknowledged it may be a choice. He made it clear that the transatlantic alliance was essentially useless without the United States at its core. I mean, I got a text last night from a former State Department official who simply wrote to me, "We are teetering on the edge." And I think that is an accurate reflection of how dramatically his language, his approach, his bruiser presentation of himself on the world stage has shifted in, just 9 days since the start of the year.
Before we talk about Renee Nicole Good and how and who is amplifying and supporting Trump's lies about what happened to her, it was Louis XIV, I think, who said "L'État, c'est moi," shortly before he got his head chopped off. That is the French equivalent of saying the only thing that matters is me.
Totally.
It is pure Louis
100%.
XIV territory. Wow. And the final question, who, I mean, no surprises, I don't imagine. Is anybody dissenting from the Trump line? Is anybody actually declining the order to ignore the evidence of their own eyes and ears? Have there been any sort of Marjorie Taylor Greene type moments where a slavish devotee actually wakes up and smells some of the coffee?
Yeah, I mean, well, we have seen Marjorie Taylor Greene moments, but she, of course, has already departed the train. There is absolutely no one on the inside at all that is raising any public questions about this, no indication that anyone's raising any private questions about it. I mean, Marco Rubio appears at times to be very discomforted by the situation in which he has placed himself, but he shows no indications of drawing any kind of line in the sand. I mean, we're even at the point now where the president told Fox News last night that he's going to meet next week Maria Corina Machado, the opposition leader from Venezuela. And he indicated that if she would like to pass her Nobel Peace Prize onto him, he would graciously accept it. He would consider that to be a very gracious move by Ms. Machado. He is basically holding this Nobel Peace Prize up as one of the prices that she has to pay in order to secure American support, even for her just to return to Venezuela. They haven't even demanded that opposition leaders must be allowed back in to Venezuela. So that's the sort of the venal point at which we now find ourselves. And all the gloves are off. I mean, the veil has been lifted. Yeah. There's no pretense anymore about the nature of authoritarian rule in this country today, but also, of course, at the end of this week, about the nature of the police state that he is creating here.
You know how much I value your contributions, because you crystallise the things that we're frightened to address sometimes, the seriousness, the profundity of these moments. Bellingcat, the New York Times visual investigation team, Washington Post visual forensic team, all publishing analysis showing that the man who shot Renee Nicole Good was not in her path when he shot her. Completely and comprehensively contradicting statements made by Donald Trump and his various cronies, and nobody has broken ranks. That's terrifying.
Well, it was J.D. Vance yesterday who I think provided a really blood-chilling appearance at the White House. If you've not watched it, the rant that J.D. Vance went on behind that White House podium, accusing Renee Nicole Good of being part of a lunatic, radical left fringe. He wouldn't even use her name. He kept referring to her as that woman. I mean, there were almost echoes of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky in it, insisting that she had used her car as a weapon to ram officers engaged in the entirely legal law enforcement operation in which they were engaged. He dragged her name through the mud. He attacked the media, saying that the media that had been falsely, in his words, reporting what had occurred were propaganda agents of the radical left. He claimed that her shooting was justified based on her actions. And there is you can't even take a casual glance at that video and reach that kind of conclusion. And the other thing we learnt yesterday, James, is that they are absolutely going to whitewash the investigation. It's not even going to be a proper investigation.
So the FBI
now cutting out Minnesota.
Yeah.
They're cutting out the local law enforcement and the local investigators. The FBI taking this in-house only. And we already heard from J.D. Vance yesterday. The agent is a hero. I mean, it will not be long before that agent finds himself invited into the Oval Office to be personally congratulated and thanked by President Donald Trump for the stone-cold, at close range shooting of an American citizen who may or may not have been participating in protests against ICE and its anti-immigration operations. But even if she was not clearly engaged in illegal activity.
I was a little bit ambushed at the end of last year by the obviousness of that moment in the Oval Office when they brutalised and insulted and sought to humiliate Volodymyr Zelensky, being of epic historical significance, being the moment that America's role on the world stage was comprehensively and irreversibly rewritten for the length of Trump's administration and his followers. It can be reversed, of course, when decent people get back in. This is the domestic equivalent, right? I mean, I know that this is death, so this isn't just words, but this is the point at which, as Trump goes public with his contempt for international law, this is the point at which his administration detaches itself entirely from domestic law.
Yes, and it's interesting that in that New York Times piece, I mean, the reporters argue that President Trump, there was a distinction between the lack of constraint that President Trump felt on the world stage and the constraint of the court, certainly not Congress, that he professed to feel domestically. But when you start killing American citizens, civilians, dead on the streets of Minneapolis, 2 people injured in Portland yesterday by the Border Patrol, who, again, are not cooperating with Oregon's investigation into what took place to that man and that woman found shot in a vehicle in Portland after they raised the alarm yesterday. When you have the masked agents of an authoritarian government taking to the streets and terrorizing, and in Minneapolis, killing members of the public, the train has left the station and it's not going to be returning anytime soon.
And Simon, thank you. And we will continue to track its progress wherever it ends up heading next with your help, for which we remain ever grateful. 3 minutes after 12 is the time.